for obvious reasons, they kind of lack on the bands above and below. So I would that would be one of my recommendations. One up, but.
Howdy, guys. This is part 1, actually part 5, but we're moving on to something else. The TX Audio DAW Master Blaster class series, part 5. We're moving into the Rxdap system, and I'm going to go over some things. I'm going to try and condense this into 2 parts. So without further ado, stand by for a second. To get a frog out of my throat. So what the Rxdap stands for, Rxdap, I call it the Received Digital Audio Processing. That's what it is. Now, let me just go over some benefits. The benefits are pretty huge. I call it basically a cloud lifter. Anybody who knows what a cloud lifter is, it's something that's used usually for TX, and it is something you use on like a weak microphone if you want to get tremendous gain out of it. So this will boost the gain dramatically of the receive audio coming out of your transceiver. Another thing it does is it provides what I call hard limiting. And what that does is it smooths out the gross variables in signal strengths. So let's say you're in a round table and you're listening to someone at like an S5 to S5.7, and you have someone at like a 10, 20, 30 over. It will smash the signal at 10 to 30 over and allow the weaker signal to pass through, and it'll keep you from having to ride the gain constantly. You know how when somebody comes in, they're really loud, and you're struggling to hear someone else. Well, this does a great job at handling that, straightening that out. It also has multiple noise reduction systems running in it, which work to strip the noise off the audio. And many times more often than not, it will actually correct people's audio if it's really horrible, and I'll show you how to do that coming in the set. I'll show you all about the manipulation of the plugins. This is going to have to be set up for an individual transceiver and noise floor, and it's only as good as the noise floor. Keep that in mind. It does help even in a noisy environment, but it depends on the transceiver. So it also works to, like if you have like a 7300, which I call a barn door. The front end's a barn door on this transceiver. It's not a very tight front end. So oftentimes you'll have signals which are encroaching into the passband that you're listening in. Close signals, a lot of IMD maybe trying to splatter in. This helps to remove that and isolate the passband. It also has a feature which is really nice in the Bertom denoiser plugin. It has high and low roll-off filters with fully adjustable frequency ranges, and I will be going over that in the second video in the full setup of the VSTs. Okay, so the first thing you want to do, this is in regards to running the Rxdap system without running a TX DAW. You do not need to run Banana at all to make the system work on pretty much any transceiver that uses either a VAC system, sound card system, i.e. Sun, Anon, Flex. I don't know anything about the Flexes, but I'm assuming they're similar. And also any transceiver that's connected to your computer via USB cable that uses a USB audio codec. So let's say any of the modern transceivers with a built-in sound card and you have a USB cable connected to it, you will see in the sounds panel a USB audio codec. For those of us that work FT8, stuff like that, yes. I'll show you how to configure that. So here we go. The first thing you want to do is download and install VB cable. It's called VB cable. I'll place the links in the description for this. And you will need one cable, and you will need VST host, which is found on my website. And when you open it, it will open exactly the way you see it here on the screen. It has all of the plugins preloaded and pre-configured for my setup. It may work well right out of the gate. Most likely it won't. You're going to have to go in and make some adjustments to get it running. Okay, so you want to download VB cable and the VST host folder, which will be on the website. And I'll place a link for that as well. Websites also will be linked on the video, the main website, so you can navigate through it and find some more goodies on there. The very first thing you want to do is turn on your rig. Now, I'm going to be working with the ICOM and the Sun. I'll show you how to get the connections made on both those radios. The Sun and the Anon will be very similar, although the Anon is quite a bit different and it's very quirky. So I don't know if I'm going to go deep into the Anon. I won't. In this, I may post a completely separate video on the Anon to get this running on that. So anyways, this will be in regards to the ICOM and the Sun. So if you have an ICOM or you have any conventional transceiver running a USB audio codec via USB cable connected to the computer, the very first thing you want to do, once the VB cable is downloaded and installed, it'll most likely ask for a reboot. Go ahead and reboot the computer. And your VST host folder has been downloaded. What I would do is I would download that, extract that to a folder on your desktop. Okay. Place that on your desktop. It does not install. It runs right out of the folder. I want to make sure people are clear on that. When they look at it, they may get confused. So, and then I'll show you the exact file. When you open that folder, what do you click on to launch VST host? And I'll show you that. Okay, so once that's done, turn on your rig. Next thing you want to do is, of course, you want to make sure the drivers are installed for the USB setup on your rig. Duh. And Captain Obvious, right? You want to go down the bottom right-hand corner. This is Windows 10 on Windows 11. Don't ask. I don't have Windows 11, but you need to navigate to the Sounds panel. So right-click on the little speaker icon, click Sounds. Okay. Once the Sounds panel opens, what you want to do is you want to go down to your, I don't have VB cable in here. I do not, because I don't use it. I use a big cable pack. But if you're using VB cable, what you need to do is you need to right-click on the playback and the recording tab. Just like what we did in the first series of videos for the DAW. You want to make sure all your sample rates are set correctly on all your devices. Okay, this is the USB audio codec. So you want to right-click on this. This is for the ICOM. Go to Properties, Advanced. Make sure sample rate is correct. I run everything at 48 kilohertz. Yours may be different, but you want all the sample rates the same. Now on the recording tab, USB audio codec, what I need you to do is go to Listen, and I need you to set this drop down, click this drop down and select that VB audio cable. Okay. Once that, and it's going to look different than mine because I'm using a cable pack. Mine's not, but yours will show up as VB cable. Select the cable and click Listen to this device. Now, remember what I said. Don't forget to go in, and once that's done, hit Apply and OK. And don't forget, make sure your VB cable is set to the correct sample rate. So everything. So I need you to go, assuming you're using a primary station card, if you're using an external sound card, you need to make sure that's correct. Okay, and the other thing is you want to Now, let me just back up for a second. Some of you may not be, you don't need an external sound card to run the system. You can run it on the Realtek speakers. I don't because I use a Realtek, an external sound card. But if you don't, if you're not working with a DAW for TX audio, you do not need to purchase a sound card. So you want to make sure your Realtek speakers, right, on playback. If you go to your Realtek speakers, which I think mine is disabled. Yes, it is disabled. You want to right-click on speakers, Realtek audio, and right-click on that and do the usual thing, properties. Just make sure, and of course you want to make sure it's enabled. Here's the catch. Whatever sound card that you use to listen to, like if you're watching YouTube videos or anything, you need that set to the default device. I'm using the M-Audio Air 192.4 currently, and so I always make sure that's set to the default device. The card that your speakers are plugged into and that your headphones are plugged into needs to be set to default. If you're not using an external card, you need to make sure your Realtek speakers are set to default. Otherwise, you're not going to hear anything. If you watch a YouTube video, you use a browser, okay? That's it. Just make sure all of these settings are 48 kilohertz. Okay, make sure the speaker's USB audio codec is set to default. Not default, but right-click on it, go to properties. Boy, I'm crazy this morning. Go to advanced, make sure it's set to 48 kilohertz. Done. You're done there. You can go ahead and apply and okay that. Now what you want to do is you want to go to your VST host folder that you extracted to your desktop. Here's my VST host folder. You want to open this. Go to VST host. This file right here says application. That's the launch file for VST host. You want to right click on this. And you can pin this to your taskbar, which I do. Mine's down here, right here. Makes it a lot more convenient. You don't have to navigate to the folder. That is the launch file. So here's something that is very important. If you are not running a DAW, this is technically, let's say you're not running Cakewalk. Well, you have to install all of these VSTs. So where do you install them to? If you don't plan on running Cakewalk or the DAW, you need to choose a folder. You can install them anywhere. But what I would do is I would install them on your C drive somewhere. And you could even install them right to this folder, the VST host folder. But you need to go to my website and download and install all of those VSTs. Instructions for installing them are at the bottom of that page. So pay attention to that. You need to choose a folder and install all of the VSTs there. I would create a folder, call it VST plugins. Maybe install them on C drive, create a folder there. You could create a folder right in the VST host folder and install them there. This is if you're not running the DAW, the Cakewalk DAW, okay? You're not running that. You need to create a folder and you need to install them all in one place. If you have to, write it down, because if you splatter them all over your computer, you'll never find them. All right. So once that's done, you need to do that, because if you open this VST host up, it's not going to find anything. There'll be nothing there. And most likely there won't be anything there when you download this. So I'll show you how to make things appear and, get the plugins all loaded up. So when you click that VST host file, the application file, and it opens up, the first thing you want to do is come up here to File, and you want to set data path. Okay, so you can navigate to the folder for the data path. All right, that's how you set that. Normally, by default, that's going to be okay. So you don't have to touch that. So now we need to set the plugin path. So if you click right here, it says set plugin path. You can add a plugin path right here with this button. So what you want to do is click this button at the very bottom right-hand corner of this window and navigate to that folder where you placed all of your VSTs. Once that's done, click OK, and now you have the plugin path. All right. Next thing you want to do is you want to rescan the plugins. So click this right here, rescan plugins, and if that plugin path is correct that you put in there, it should find all the plugins. Score, you're done there. And once that happens, most likely everything will light up. You'll see everything pop in here. What you will need to do when you first light it up, I would set the plugin path first. I would go through all this because it's going to light up dead. There won't be anything here except the engine input and the engine output. Those are the only two things, and there will be no connections. There will be no plugins. So once you set your plugin path and you rescan the plugins, wait for it's going to take a little bit to scan the plugins because it's going to scan most likely all over the place. So once that's done, this little drop down right here, you want to click this drop down, take this bar and scroll it up. You'll see SDR pass-through and 7300 raw. What you want to do is select 7300 raw. When you click this, everything should load right up, okay? The pass-through right here is literally if you want to completely bypass the plugins. Just put everything in bypass. You can just go in here and select pass-through, and you'll have just the raw front end of the radio coming through. All right. SDR disregard. You can play with that if you want. That's a different configuration. I don't use it anymore, but it's in there. So these are the only two I use. So 7300 raw is the full VST plugin configuration. That will load everything up for you. Last thing you need to do is go to Devices, click Wave. You need to set your input port to VB cable. Okay, that's going to grab the audio from the transceiver. Remember in the sounds panel, in the USB audio codec, in the recording tab, you set the VB cable. Listen to this device. Listen through this device. And the audio from the transceiver will come out into that cable, and it will come out of the end of that cable into VST host. So you need to select the VB cable, and then your output port you need to set to whatever your primary station card is, regardless of whether you're using a external sound card like I am, or if you're using the Realtek audio speakers. I would go ahead and set your buffer right here to 500 samples, and make sure your sample rate is matched to all your other devices, which is 48 kilohertz for me. Okay, once that's done, click OK. Bang, everything should light up and it should start, assuming you have a signal on the radio. So what you need to do is navigate to the radio, and she should be off and running. Make sure your RF gain is up. Let me see. So we covered all that. So now the very final stage, let me get over to the camera. Now, if you're not running a DAW, you don't need to touch the radio as far as the menu goes, because audio always plays back through the USB audio codec, through that recording tab. It's always playing back. If the radio's on and it's receiving, yes, it will. So I'm just going to go over this again. If you are using the DAW, hit the menu button, go to Set, Connectors, And you want your data off mod set to USB and your data mod set to USB. Okay, there may be some combinations that work, but that's where mine's set, and mine runs on FT8 and everything. The only issue with FT8 is that you don't use the data mode anymore. If you're passing your TX audio to the radio, you don't use the data mode in FT8. You use just standard LSB or USB. It works. Trust me. Okay, so if you're not using the TX DAW, you don't need to touch anything. You can leave the radio set up exactly the way you have it right now, because all you're using is the receive side. All right, so let me get the audio on. Get to a signal.
Build a garage and build me this den I'm in right now, and it's got a good sized den. It's about 400 square foot den, something like that. And
Okay, so there you go. She's running. Let me get over to the other screen quick. I'll show it to you operating. Let me get the audio back on.
I just go up the hill with the box blade, and you can adjust one side of it down. You can adjust it like a
bring the audio level down a bit. So what you'll notice is the Brit presser. You can see the hard limiting taking place. And let me just walk through the plugins really quick. So you have the Brit presser, Bertom denoiser. Now you can try it without purchasing the Bertom denoiser, but I find it does help. Okay, this is the Bitsonic sound recovery running in a denoiser profile. This right here is the Reefer standalone. This is a noise reduction system. And this right here is kind of cool. You may like it, you may not. It's called the Ambio Orbit. And this is basically a binaural plugin. What it does is it creates a binaural stereoscopic image of a mono signal. Very, very cool. Now to toggle these plugins in and out, let me just mute this quick. So to toggle these plugins in and out, there's two things I want to show you regarding, because once this lights up, you're going to say, well, how the heck do I work with it? So I want to at least cover this right now. I'm not going to go into the editing of the plugins, just some very basic stuff. So if you want to see the actual plugin itself, so let's close this. This is the Reefer. If you want to see the plugin itself, right here on these plugins, in these little boxes right here, you've got the red X, which is close, and you got edit parameters. You basically click, it's not popping up there, but it's this little box right here. You won't hurt anything. Just go ahead and click on stuff to check out what it does. Click on the little box right here, and it will open the plugin, the actual plugin window. And this is where you make all your edits, okay? That's how that works. Now, if you want to bypass a plugin, let's say you've got a really weak signal and the Reefer standalone is just gating the crap out of it. You can bypass any of these plugins by going to the bottom left corner of the plugin. There's a little speaker icon. If you hover your mouse over, it'll say bypass. Just click that. And it will take that, it'll just bypass the plugin, so the audio goes straight through it without any effect. Okay, so that covers that. Okay, couple things I wanted to show you. Just to get you going. So you'll notice that this is the engine input slider right here. This is your gain going to all of the plugins. There's 3 areas, actually 4 areas, and this is what I mean by this is a complex system. So it's going to take you a while. Be patient to get it dialed in. This is one area that's critically important, is the engine input gain. Oftentimes, the lower you run, especially on a strong signal, if you back this gain down, depending on your noise floor, it'll work much better, right? So if you go back into your sounds panel, right click on the speaker icon, go to the recording tab, go to your USB audio codec, go to properties, and click on levels. You notice my level for the audio coming out of the radio is only at 35. My advice to you would be absolutely do not run this at 100%. You don't need to, because all you're doing is you're pulling in more noise with it. All right, so play with that. Maybe try it at 50%, and then work with this engine input right here on the VST host. That. Okay, if you get it dialed in with that, great. Now, just a sideshow. I know there's a lot, but you can go back in and you can watch this over and over again. So the RF gain, I never run the RF gain wide open, except, well, I even don't do it on, like, let's say 17 meters, 15 meters on really weak signals. I usually have it, sometimes I'll run it about 3 o'clock. It's never wide open. Right now, you can't see it, but it's running about 10 o'clock on the RF gain. So the goal of this is to quiet things down, lift up the audio, and limit the noise, right? Which is kind of redundant because I said quiet things down. But the RF gain really, once it's set up, you should be able to run the entire system on the RF gain. So just riding the RF gain on, really, you're listening on 40, 75, 80, and you got like 20 to 40 over signals in there. You can wind that RF gain right back to like 9 o'clock. Just crush it. So basically all you've got is audio coming through, right? So that's basically it. That's it for running it on any conventional transceiver that uses a USB audio codec. So what I'm going to do now, just really quick, this is really simple. This is for the Sun Freaks. And this is in regards to if you're bringing the audio direct into the transceiver, right? So let me go ahead. I'm going to launch the Sun software. Radio is running. I'm going to just show you how to set that in the sound card. Okay, so here's the Sun. So what you want to do now is you want to go up to Options, Sound Card. This works exactly the same way as a conventional radio. So you have your sound card. I bring my audio direct in through a high cable, so I don't use the input. The output, set that to line out, virtual audio cable. In other words, this will be your VB cable. This will be VB cable. So just set that to your VB cable. You don't have to touch VST host. It's working the exact same way as the USB audio codec. You set it to listen through that device. Well, all you have to do is go into the Sun and set it to your VB cable, and it will send all your audio out to VST host. You don't have to change the output or anything. So once that's done, this radio really sings with this system. It really works well. It is unbelievable how good this thing works. I have people comment on streams all the time. They're like, holy crap. I'm just shocked every time I run it. It's beautiful. It's a masterpiece. The NR is important when the bands are very noisy. If you have any kind of static crashing. And I showed my NR. I can't remember where I showed that. Let me show that to you, where my NR setting is set. So if you go to Device, DSP, it was one of the recent videos. So my NR is set to 1. Let me open this up all the way. This is important. Tap set to 1, delay set to 5, and those are the other settings right here that I have set on the NR. Okay, I do not use the audio peak filter. That's where that's set to. So oftentimes when it's noisy, I'll turn on the NR. And what I do with this system is I run the AGC level control very loose. So that's out to 70 dB, which is pretty loose. And then all I have to do is I drive the entire system with the volume control. So depending on how strong the signal is or how weak the signal is, if the signal's weaker, I'll increase the volume a little bit, which is basically the preemptive drive level to the entire system. That's how that works. Very, very simple. It is not hard. All right, that's done. So we're done, folks. All right. I'll get the links. The video will post, but give it a little time. I'll get the links, and it'll take a little bit of time to render. We will catch you all later. Hope this works for you, and I hope you have as much fun with it as I do. I cannot live without this system. See ya.